Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Night Watchman News. It's June the 6th, 2012, and we are broadcasting right here out of FEMA Region 8 here in Salt Lake City. We got a lot of ground to cover today, so let's just get started. Okay, our first news item we're going to talk about, we're going to do kind of a special feature tonight. We're going to talk about the green agenda and how the government is using the green agenda to steal your tax money, to suck the wealth out of you, and to basically turn you into their carbon slave. So I found this report. It was actually written a couple of years ago, back in 2009. But I almost did a spit take because this is from the Huffington Post, and it's from their special green section. And it looks like they have a guest columnist here, this guy Harold Ambler, that says, "Mr. Gore, apology accepted." Maybe a bunch of you remember Al Gore's film Inconvenient Truth. It was full of a lot of inconvenient lies about global warming. This guy just kind of breaks it all apart. So he doesn't really go so far as to say that Barack Obama is just as much to blame for the green agenda as Al Gore. I don't see why not, but he seems to think so. You got to do a little backpedaling if you want to get any traction on Huffington Post, I guess. Basically, he talks about how the whole idea of global warming has been reversed, and it's now called climate change. And there's a reason for that, because climate is always changing. That's what climate does. I mean, even saying the words climate and change in the same breath is kind of redundant, because that's basically what climate is. Climate is change. But they just have that in there because the earth will warm and it'll cool. And they can say that human beings are responsible for all the evil things that are happening to the world. Now, the earth is getting warmer. But what this guy says is that the earth has always gone through periods where it's gotten warmer. During a period here on earth that humans have lived, it's called the Holocene era, and he kind of breaks it down. During the Holocene Optimum, which was from 7000 BC to 3000 BC, during which humanity began to flourish and advance technologically, the warm Roman Optimum was in 200 BC to 400 AD, a time of abundant crops that promoted the empire. The cold Dark Ages between 400 AD to 900 AD, during which the Nile River froze. Major cities were abandoned and the Roman Empire fell apart. So we have all these different periods in human history when the earth has heated up and when the earth has cooled down. And we're going through a relative warming period at this point. And what this guy is saying is that the earth has always done this. Where this has come from, what a lot of the emerging evidence is come from, is that the sun produces these sunspots, and there's, weather, as it were, on the sun involving these sunspots, and that affects our weather dramatically because it, excuse me, we're very near a very large star. The other thing, and he points to some research by another scientist, something called the cosmic rays, which are basically sending these, there's basically this solar weather and this cosmic weather that sends heat signatures into our environment and alters the way that our weather works. So nobody talks about this stuff. Al Gore is making a killing off of this whole climate change scam, and he wants us to believe that if we don't tax our carbon signatures and if we don't let the government govern every single thing that we do, the whole earth is going to end up underwater and we're all going to die. And just none of it's true, folks. And back in 2009, Alex Jones and his crew over at Prison Planet blew the lid off this thing. Al Gore set to become the first carbon billionaire. Al Gore wanted to set up a brokerage firm that would handle all of the incoming tax revenue from carbon taxes, and he would basically get wealthy off of it. So let's read a little bit of that. The New York Times has lifted the lid on how Al Gore stands to benefit to the tune of billions of dollars if the carbon tax proposals he's pushing come to fruition in the United States. One of the companies that Gore invested in, Silver Springs Networks, recently received a contract worth $560 million from the Energy Department to install smart meters in people's houses that record and critics fear could eventually regulate energy usage. So Al Gore is behind these smart meters that are getting put into people's homes and regulating how much energy they're going to be using. So he's, dumb like a fox, I guess is all I can tell you, is that he gives us the wrong information with all of this alarmist rhetoric that he has in his film Inconvenient Truth. And it's all based on conjecture, but it doesn't matter because it fits the globalist agenda to track our carbon signatures and basically make human life on the planet Earth illegal. And population control is also a big part of that. But this has all been discredited. I mean, one of the main proponents of it, and this is from the Daily Mail, is the guy who came up with the Gaia theory. His name's James Lovelock. And this is also from... this is from actually back in April, so this is recent news. I made a mistake. Gaia theory scientist James Lovelock admits he was alarmist about the impact of climate change. Environmental scientist James Lovelock, renowned for his terrifying predictions of climate change's deadly impact on the planet, has gone back on his previous claims, admitting they were alarmist. The 92-year-old Briton, who also developed the Gaia theory of the Earth as a single organism, has said climate change is still happening, just not as quickly as he once warned. He added that other environmental commentators, such as former Vice President Al Gore, are also guilty of exaggerating their arguments. 5 years ago, he had claimed, before the century is over, billions of us will die, and the few breeding pairs of people that survive will be in the Arctic, where the climate remains tolerable. But in an interview with MSNBC, he admitted, I made a mistake. He said, the problem is, we don't know what the climate is doing. We thought we knew 20 years ago. That led to some alarmist books, mine included, because it looked clear-cut, but it hasn't happened. And this is the most amazing part. The climate is doing its usual tricks. There's nothing much really happening yet. We were supposed to be halfway toward a frying world. The temperature has stayed almost constant, whereas it should have been rising. Carbon dioxide is rising, no question about it. So yeah, carbon dioxide is rising, but even one of the main proponents of this idea of climate change, James Lovelock, has admitted climate change is not happening, and climate is up to its old usual tricks. But you see, this is what they thought the world would look like now. If you can't tell at home, this is London. Looks like it's completely submerged in water. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen to the Queen? What about the Diamond Jubilee? Oh no, what about Big Ben? Wow, they really had us going there, folks, didn't they? Okay, but there's something even more insidious behind this green agenda, this green Bolshevism, this green Nazism, and that is the UN's plan for an initiative that they call Agenda 21. And what Agenda 21 is a treaty, or I guess an agreement, made with members of the UN to help control climate change and to help control the carbon emissions that are being emitted into our atmosphere. So if you head to my linked article at LouRockwell.com, you're going to find Al Gore, Agenda 21, and population control. That's right, folks, population control. And this was originally on the End of the American Dream website. Imagine going to sleep one night and waking up many years later in a totally different world. In this futuristic world, literally everything you do is tightly monitored and controlled by control freak bureaucrats in the name of sustainable development, and with the goal of promoting the green agenda. An international ruling body has centralized global control over all human activity. What you eat, what you drink, where you live, how warm or cold your home can be, and how much fuel you can use is determined by them. And it sounds like a science fiction novel, but that's exactly what Agenda 21 wants to produce. Now, the United Nations, if you go to the United Nations webpage, they do have a lot of stuff on Agenda 21. You can learn everything you need to know. However, the full Agenda 21 text is written in governmentese, so you probably won't be able to read it, but check it out if you get the time. Agenda 21, this is their words from their documents. Agenda 21 is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups in every area in which human impacts on the environment. So that would be pretty much everywhere that human beings live. When you start doing deep research into Agenda 21, you will find that describing it as a comprehensive plan is an understatement. Virtually all forms of human activity impact the environment. The rabid environmentalists behind the green agenda intend to take all human activity and put it into a box called sustainable development. So what's the solution? Well, Al Gore had this to say. One of the things we could do about it is to change the technologies, to put out less of this pollution, to stabilize the population. And one of the principal ways of doing that is to empower and educate girls and women. You have to have ubiquitous availability of fertility management so women can choose how many children to have, the spacing of children. You have to lift child survival rates so that parents feel comfortable having small families, and most important, you have to educate girls and empower women. And that's the most powerful leveraging factor. How come whenever these guys talk about empowering women, it's all about basically attacking their fertility and maiming them and basically turning them into slaves of the global government? I mean, I'm not saying that you have to have a large family or a small family, but I think that people's right to have a large family, if they decide to, shall not be infringed upon. And Al Gore doesn't agree. He wants to empower women by basically destroying their ability to reproduce. And he says educating them, which basically means brainwashing them into never wanting children and to never getting married, never forming families. So this is the dark core of green Nazism. So whenever you hear people talk about go green, whenever you see these government initiatives, take warning. I'm not saying that we should stop caring about the environment. I want the environment to do well too. I think there's a lot of things that we could do to reduce the waste. One of the things that we could do is get rid of all these elitist scum that are telling us to stop consuming everything when they're the ones that are using all the stuff. I mean, Al Gore is riding around in a Suburban. His new California home has something like 5 or 7 swimming pools or something like that. And he uses many, many thousands more kilowatt hours to heat his gigantic mansion than we would ever use in our own homes in a year. And he's telling us to scale back. These guys don't care about the environment, folks. They just want us all on the slave grid, paying our taxes, attacking our ability to reproduce, instituting their population control, and basically controlling every single thing that we do, because everything that we do produces a carbon signature. Okay, so that's kind of like our special report that we have on green Nazism or green Bolshevism. Look into some of those things that I'm talking about, and you'll you'll find yourself pulling away the green mask and seeing the evil black skull of corporate world government just beneath there. Okay, so we're gonna dive into some other news items here. Let's get into some current events. So Putin is arriving in China, and he's seeking stronger ties. I don't know if you guys can see this this great picture of Vladimir Putin. He looks really upset talking to this aide. That's the Chinese President Hu Jintao. So Putin is meeting in China, and he's talking about Syria. That's right. So he's basically he's not making a stance to Western media or saying exactly what he wants to do with Syria, but my suspicion is that he's meeting with the Chinese president. Oh, and I forgot to tell you who else is there.